Hello, YouTube land. My name is Teresa Hernandez, and I'm doing this ancestry DNA results reveal for people of Puerto Rican descent. Both of my parents are Puerto Rican, and well, of course, anyone can watch it, but people of Puerto Rican descent might be especially interested to watch it if you're thinking about doing an ancestry DNA type of test. There are other ones out there on the market like 23andMe, just to name two different examples, but I chose to do ancestry DNA, and I submitted my sample on, I want to say, June 26th of 2016, and I received my email notice on August 12th. So it took about 2 months, which they warn you. They let you know in advance that it could take about 6 to 8 weeks. So I was prepared for that. And I received my results this morning, and I'm really excited to share them with the world. Before I do, though, I'll let you know what I thought they were going to be. So because of what I've heard from my mother's side of the family and looking at photos of my paternal grandmother and my paternal great-grandmother, what I had decided my predictions would be is that I thought for sure I'll have West African, that I would have Native American, and that I would have European, but specifically Spain and France. Because of how I've been received in East Asia, I worked as an English teacher in Korea for 2 years, and I've been in China now for about 2 weeks. A lot of times when I've traveled in Southeast Asia, I traveled briefly. I visited Thailand briefly 2 years ago. People have sort of received me as being Asian. So I thought maybe I do have, something there that, kind of snuck in, several generations ago. It's more than possible when you're Puerto Rican or when you're from a place that is a very mixed ethnicity. So I didn't have any concrete evidence or documentation, but I thought maybe I have some East Asian. It seemed very possible. In addition, I thought maybe some North African, because when I lived in Saudi Arabia, a lot of times my students thought that I was Egyptian. So I thought, okay, maybe I could be, a little Egyptian. I've had people ask me if I was from Tunisia. So I thought, maybe it's possible. I know when I visited Cairo in December of 2010, everyone thought I was Egyptian. They thought I was Egyptian American, visiting as a tourist, but they would have swore up and down that I was Egyptian. So, I've had some ideas, some inclinations. I thought maybe East Asian. When I lived in Saudi Arabia, some of the Brits that I made friends with there thought that maybe I was from New Zealand, that maybe I had, a little Kiwi going on. And in a picture that I have of my paternal grandmother and great-grandmother, I always thought that my paternal grandmother looked kind of Filipino, and I always thought that my paternal great-grandmother looked South Asian, like maybe Bangladeshi, but, I could never know for sure. Anyways, so I got my results this morning. I did initially make a reaction video, but I was in my pajamas and I looked like a hot mess, and so thankfully I tried to upload the video and it didn't upload, and I think that was a sign from God saying, Teresa, don't embarrass yourself. So I've taken a shower, I brushed my teeth, I went and had a hair appointment, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my results. And I hope that after watching them, someone who sees them can be inspired to want to find out about their roots. Because I know that I've been wanting to find out about my roots since I was a child, ever since I watched Alex Haley's The Roots. I was completely fascinated by the story of Kunta Kinte and about that journey to go back to Africa and claim his history, which is something that those of us of African descent have had robbed from us. So, I've always known that like I've had some black somewhere, but I don't know what percentage and exactly where it would be from. So anyways, I've given you, I think, a sufficient amount of background information, and by now you're probably like, would you just get to the point? So I'm going to go ahead and get to the point. Okay, this is my breakdown. For African ancestry, I am 30% African. Of that 30% African. I am 9% Cameroon, Congo. I am 7% Nigerian. I am 6% Mali, 3% Africa North, which is Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, Algeria. I'm 2% Ivory Coast, Ghana, 1% Benin, Togo, 1% Africa South Central hunter-gatherers, and less than 1% Africa Southeastern Bantu. And what I really find fascinating about the African portion of my history, or my ancestry, is that when I look at the map, I'm going to see if I can show it to you here a little bit. Bear with me, sorry, I'm trying to handle this technology. If you can kind of see that there, and I guess it might look backwards to you, but that's okay. Typically, people who live in North America that are of African ancestry typically have West Africa because of the slave trade. Some Latinos that I know that have posted their ancestry DNA results on places like YouTube have had some North African, maybe 5%, 10%, 3%, whatever. So some MENA region representation. But usually most people that are alive today that live in North America almost exclusively have West African heritage. So for me, when I look at my map, I have not only West African, which I expected, but I also have South African and South Central African and East African. And I've been told by looking at different DNA results and trying to do a little research about it before I got my own results, that having both East and West African is quite rare. So, I mean, I feel kind of special in that way, but what I should tell you is that last spring I had the opportunity to do volunteer work in East Africa. I was in Tanzania for 3 months, and while I was there, I was living in a very rural community, a small town called Manduli, which is about 2 hours away from Arusha, which is a city in northern Tanzania. And I remember we had an opportunity to do a boma visit. The bomas are the mud thatch huts where our students lived. Our students were Maasai. And I had a chance to meet one of the chiefs there. And when he met me, he said, "Are you sure you're not African? Because you have this face, you have these features." And I thought, I know I am, I just can't tell you specifically where that is from, because I'd never really researched or even thought that I had serious options to research it apart from doing a DNA sample. So for me, that feels kind of extra special because I have been to East Africa and I have seen those people and I have interacted with those people and I know those people now, and so it feels that much more special. It's not a large percentage. The West African is the largest percentage. It's only a trace region, but it's still nice to know that I have that connection. I was also really surprised by the South African part, but not entirely surprised because I've made friends from South Africa that say, "Oh, you look like a colored girl from Cape Town." Now, for those of you who don't know, colored in South Africa does not mean the same thing as colored in American. It doesn't have the same connotation as 1950s America. Colored, to my understanding, just means biracial. So to them, it's "Oh, I thought you were a colored girl from South Africa." And I thought, I could see that, but I've never been to South Africa, but I hope to go soon. So anyways, for me, what really struck me about this particular portion of my ancestry was the fact that I'm from all over Africa, and that makes me feel really special. I'm from North Africa, I'm from East Africa, I'm from West Africa, I'm from Central Africa, and I'm from South Africa. I am 100% of my 30% African is from all over the continent, which I think is awesome. Okay, so now let's go to the other parts. So I said that I was 30% African according to my results, which means that there's still another 70% floating around there. So let's see what that is. The largest chunk, which I'm not surprised about, and this is true for most Boricuas that I've seen do their results, is European. So my European percentage is actually a little bit lower than what I've seen some people do on YouTube. But according to my ancestry results, I'm 51% European. And of that 51%, it's broken down to 16% Iberian Peninsula, which is to say Spain. My last name is Hernandez, so that's not really a huge shock. But this is what did shock me. 15%, only one less percent, Italian Greece. I would have never thought I had any Italian in me. I just never thought that it was there. I was really surprised, but I find that to be very interesting. I know that growing up and taking voice lessons, I used to sing arias, and you kind of learn about a culture through its music. So I've always had like a little bit of connection with Italy in like my own artsy fartsy way. My first voice teacher was an Italian girl from Long Island. Her name was Angela Stefanini. She'd be like, "Oh my God, Teresa, like why are you so shy?" Like she was really fun. And she didn't really talk like that. I just can't do a Long Island accent. So anyways, the part of my European percentage that really shocked me the most was I am 12% Irish. I have no idea how that happened. Of course, it's not unknown, but the reason why I'm so surprised about the Irish percentage is that we've always thought that on my mother's side we were French. My mother's maiden name is Ducot. It's a French name. So I thought I was going to have like maybe 20% Spanish, maybe 25%, French. I have not even 1% trace regions of France. And this is what really has rocked my world about these results. Almost to the point where like I was thinking, did Ancestry DNA send me the wrong results? I don't think that they did for reasons that I'm going to share with you later. But I was really surprised by the 12% Irish because of the family oral history. But if I'm really honest, no one loves mashed potatoes more than I do. Growing up, I've always loved potatoes. And so, I remember being in school and learning about the potato famine and how that, was like a catalyst for people from Ireland moving to America. I love mashed potatoes almost as much as I love rice and beans. I love rice and beans the most, but I love mashed potatoes. Anyways, moving along. Then I have trace regions for Europe. And when I initially saw this, I was like, oh, that's so cute, because I did not expect this either. But according to my results, I'm 5% European Jewish, which I did not know to expect at all. And according to Ancestry.com, European Jewish is often what they refer to as Ashkenazi Jews, or apparently a group of Jews that left the Levant after the Roman Empire, and then they sort of settled in Eastern Europe. And Eastern Europe, according to the website, ranges anywhere from like Poland to what used to be Yugoslavia. It's that whole region there. Which is kind of, it's really interesting to me to know that that is part of my heritage. Because, you hear about Jews living in Spain, for example. So I thought that if I were Jewish, there would be some sort of Jewish-Spanish connection. But according to the website, it's an Eastern European connection, which I would have not guessed for myself. Okay, and then I have 2% Scandinavia. Okay. I've seen other people have Scandinavia, and then I have less than 1% Great Britain. I would have thought that if I would have had anything from that part of the world in terms of like a larger percentage, I would have thought maybe 15% Great Britain and maybe a trace region for Ireland, but no, it's the other way around, which is, really surprising for me. Okay, so that was the 51% European. Now, one part that I absolutely did expect, but I thought that the percentage would have been higher, was Native American. Because anyone who knows their Puerto Rican history and heritage knows that the indigenous people who lived in Puerto Rico, who lived in the Caribbean, before they were slaughtered and colonized by the Spanish and others, were Taino. So I knew that I was going to have Native American, but I didn't know how much. I've seen some people have as high as 25, 30%. my Native American percentage is 12%, which is really mind-boggling because I am as much Native American, which I always knew I had, as I am Irish, which I never knew I had. It's weird to think that both are equally percented, if that makes sense. Okay, and then one thing that I was kind of excited to see, which I had like a gut feeling, I had a little suspicion, but there was no way that I could have known. I said before that I thought that my great-grandmother on my father's side looked kind of South Asian, Bangladeshi. I wasn't really sure because I'd never seen pictures of her as a young woman. I only have a couple of photos of her when I was a baby, and she was quite old then. But according to ancestry.com, I have a trace region of Asia South, which is less than 1%, and Asia South is pretty much Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, kind of, and Nepal, that whole region. So, like, that made me feel like, oh, I have good, good gut instincts. So I was pretty happy about that. Let's see. So I had a trace region of Asia South. And then what was fascinating to me, and like I had a good chuckle about this, was I told you before that I'd met Brits in the Middle East that used to ask me, are you from New Zealand? Are you Kiwi? You look kind of Kiwi. Like, what's going on? And so, I wondered, I'm like, maybe it's possible. I don't know logistically how, that would have happened because these regions are so far apart. But according to the site, I have a trace region of less than 1% of Pacific Islander, and specifically Polynesia. And when you look at the trace region on the map, it circles from New Zealand all the way to Hawaii. And we do know that there was a moment in history where Puerto Ricans were transported to the island of Hawaii, and then they would have, intermingled and intermarried and had babies. So I'm not sure if it's Polynesian from Hawaii, which seems more plausible, or if it's Polynesian from like New Zealand, which just is really fascinating to even think about. Okay, so the last little bit of percentage was, and I wondered about this only because of how my students, some of them thought that I was Arab, and like we've gone over the fact that I have a 3% North African, but the final percentage of everything was actually West Asia. And West Asia means to say the Middle East. And that I have a 5%. So West Asia, the Middle East, is basically, if you circle from Turkey, you go over Iran, and it's basically, you're just covering the whole Arabian Peninsula, where Saudi Arabia, Oman, Yemen, Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, Qatar, UAE, like all of those countries. So I am 5% Middle Eastern, which is fun to know. And I'm going to just double check one more time to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. No trace regions or anything, but no, that should be 100% of me. So when I was, choosing to do this ancestry DNA test, in my gut, I knew that I was going to be all over the place. I just knew because Puerto Ricans have such a diverse background. We are not a homogenous people by any stretch of the imagination. And I know that because of my journey through world travel and just, my life experience, people usually would never guess that I was Puerto Rican. Growing up and traveling and then, moving out of my mom's house and being an English teacher abroad, I got so many different guesses that, I never really thought of being identified with certain regions of the world. People have thought I, was Egyptian. People thought I was Pakistani. People thought I was Filipino. People thought I was, Kiwi. So, for me, like allowing people to project their expectations or to project their, I guess, the lens of their life experience has been fascinating. It has not changed. in any way whatsoever the way that I think of myself or the way that I see myself, but it's been fascinating to understand how I am perceived through the lens of other people's life experiences. So that was part of the reason that motivated me also to want to find out where I'm from and how it all came to be. I've told you some of my surprises, and I think so far it seems like my biggest surprise was the 12% Irish and having no French. But I was also surprised that I had no East Asia. I really thought that I could have had 5 or 10% East Asia, which would have been, you know, China, Korea, Japan, Mongolia, or even like Southeast Asia, like, you know, the Philippines, because I always thought that my grandmother looked really Filipina. Or Thai. When I went to Bangkok, people thought that that I was Thai. So I'm really surprised I don't have any East Asian or Southeast Asian. But I just think it's fascinating that when I look at my world map and like I see all of the regions that have helped to make me a human being, almost the entire world came together to make that happen. So it's a really humbling but fascinating experience to be educated about my roots in this way. I may never know their names, their faces, their occupations, or the struggles that they had to go through slavery, through displacement, through famine, through illness. But I have so much gratitude that my ancestors survived. I am the product of people who survived. And I get to live on this planet today because of people that did not quit. So, if you are someone that is thinking about doing some sort of a DNA find your roots type of inquiry, if you're interested in having that journey, I did use Ancestry DNA. There are other companies out there. I'm considering doing 23andMe next year. And the reason why I say next year and not in 2 weeks is because right now I'm living in China, and getting a new kit in the mail will be like a huge hassle, and it'll be expensive. But when I'm stateside next summer, I'm thinking about doing 23andMe because they go into like your medical predispositions for like illnesses. They can give you a more three-dimensional, composite sketch about your medical history and things of that nature. I don't look for the nationality, ethnic information to be any different. I look for that to be the same because the science is basically the same. But I think that it would be interesting to get more information. 23andMe is about $100 more than Ancestry DNA. I paid $99 for my kit, and I believe that 23andMe is $199, but you do get more information. So I'm considering doing that for next year just to see what sort of medical info that would reveal. But anyways, I'm very satisfied with my results, and if you're someone that is really interested in genealogy, if you come from a background where you may not have the resources to go through archives because of slavery or genocide or war or famine, or even if you are someone that can go through archives, either way, it's definitely worthwhile, and I've really enjoyed learning about my roots. So what I want to do is I want to take time to read about the specific regions, because Ancestry DNA does give you the opportunity to go through and like read about each region that you're from, and just sort of, try to make a composite sketch for myself about the culture, history, the music, the language, and then I hope to be able to visit some of these places as time and opportunity and finances will allow, because I think that there's nothing more educational than being able to travel and touch and see something for yourself. So anyways, my name is Teresa, and these are my Ancestry DNA results, and I hope that they've inspired you to want to find your roots. Goodbye.